The Dallas Cowboys are staring at one of the most pivotal off-seasons in recent memory, and what's unfolding right now isn't just roster tweaking. It's a full-scale recalibration of identity on the defensive side of the football, paired with quiet but meaningful shifts across the roster that could define whether this team is a contender or just another talented group that falls short when it matters most. Everything begins with the most glaring issue on this roster, and there's no way to sugarcoat it. The linebacker position is a problem. Not a small crack, not a depth concern, but a foundational weakness that could dictate how far this defense can go. When you look at the current group, headlined by DeMarvion Overshown, there's talent, there's speed, but there's also uncertainty. Injuries have already cast a shadow over Overshown's reliability, and behind him, the depth simply doesn't inspire confidence for a team with championship aspirations. That's why the idea of bringing in a stabilizing force like Patrick Queen becomes so fascinating. Queen isn't just a name, he's a tone setter. Even coming off a down tackling season, his durability and versatility offer something Dallas desperately lacks: consistency in the middle of the field. A trade for Queen wouldn't just plug a hole, it would fundamentally change how opposing offenses attack this defense. Suddenly, crossing routes aren't as easy. Running lanes close faster. The entire structure tightens. But there's risk baked into that move. Trading valuable draft capital for a player who may not be at his peak form raises questions about long-term roster building. And that's where the Cowboys find themselves stuck between two timelines. Are they building for sustained success, or are they trying to maximize the current window? If the answer leans toward the present, then a name like Bobby Wagner makes even more sense. Wagner is the embodiment of experience, leadership, and football intelligence. At 36, he's no longer the sideline-to-sideline force he once was, but what he brings mentally could be just as valuable. For a young defense under a new system, having Wagner in the locker room could accelerate development across the board. The trade-off, however, is clear. In coverage, he's a liability, and in today's NFL, that's something offenses will exploit relentlessly. Then there's the middle ground option in Jermaine Pratt, a player who won't dominate headlines, but might be exactly what this team needs. Pratt represents stability. He's the kind of player who won't win you games single-handedly, but he won't lose them either. And for a defense that struggled with consistency, that might be more valuable than flash. While the linebacker situation dominates the conversation, the Cowboys have quietly made moves in the secondary that could reshape the identity of this defense. The addition of P.J. Locke is more than just a depth signing. This is a player who nearly lost his career, battled back from a serious spinal surgery, and returned with a renewed sense of purpose. That kind of resilience isn't just inspirational, it's contagious. Players like Locke bring an edge, a perspective that can shift locker room culture in subtle but meaningful ways. And when you pair that with the arrival of Kobe Durant, you start to see a pattern emerging. Durant isn't just another corner, he's a playmaker. A turnover-focused defensive back who openly talks about getting the ball back for Dak Prescott. That mindset matters. This defense isn't just trying to stop opponents anymore. It's trying to create chaos. If you're enjoying this deep dive into how the Cowboys are reshaping their roster and what it means for the upcoming season, make sure you subscribe to the channel and stay locked in, because we're breaking down every move, every strategy, and every implication as this offseason unfolds. Now, let's talk about the draft, because this is where things get even more complicated. The Cowboys are sitting in a position where they could go in multiple directions, but the board might not cooperate. Names like Jermad McCoy and T.J. Parker keep surfacing in mock drafts, and for good reason. McCoy offers upside at corner, especially with injury concerns surrounding Darren Bland and others in the secondary. Parker, on the other hand, brings pass-rushing potential that could complement the existing edge group. But here's the problem. Neither of those picks addresses the linebacker issue. And if Dallas walks out of the first round without fixing that position, they're essentially betting the entire season on a patchwork solution. That's a dangerous gamble in a conference loaded with elite offenses. There's also the possibility of trading back, accumulating picks, and targeting multiple needs instead of reaching for a single player. It's a strategy that makes sense on paper, especially if the top-tier talent is off the board. But it requires precision. One wrong evaluation, one missed opportunity, and suddenly the roster gaps become even more glaring. On the offensive side of the ball, things aren't as stable as they might appear. The running back room, led by Javonte Williams, looks serviceable at first glance. But dig deeper, and the concerns start to pile up. Williams has dealt with injuries throughout his career, and behind him, the depth is filled with question marks. Players like Malik Davis and Jaden Blue offer flashes, but relying on them for an extended stretch is a risk that could derail the entire offense. This is where roster construction becomes a chess match. Do you invest a mid-round pick in a running back to secure depth and future potential, or do you continue to prioritize the defense? Every decision has a ripple effect, and for a team with as many needs as Dallas, there's very little margin for error. Meanwhile, the quarterback situation has quietly evolved with the addition of Sam Howell. This is a low-risk, high-upside move that gives the Cowboys something they didn't fully have before, a backup with legitimate starting experience. Howell isn't a finished product, but his arm talent and aggressiveness add a different dimension to the quarterback room. If Dak Prescott were to miss time, Howell provides a level of capability that could keep the season afloat. And then there are the contract situations that continue to linger in the background. George Pickens playing on the franchise tag creates uncertainty in the receiving core. It's a temporary solution that could become a distraction if not handled properly. At the same time, the situation with Brandon Aubrey highlights the complexities of valuing special teams in today's NFL. Aubrey wants to be paid like the best in the league, and the Cowboys seem willing, but the gap in negotiations suggests this isn't resolved anytime soon. All of these moving pieces point to one undeniable truth. The Cowboys are not a finished product. They are a team in transition, balancing ambition with uncertainty, trying to build a roster capable of competing at the highest level while navigating the realities of injuries, contracts, and limited resources. And that's what makes this offseason so compelling. Every move feels like it carries extra weight. Every decision could be the difference between a deep playoff run and another year of what-ifs. As we look ahead, the question isn't just whether the Cowboys will improve. It's whether they can solve their biggest problems in time. Because in the NFL, windows close fast. And for a team with this much talent, this much expectation, and this much pressure, standing still isn't an option. If you want to stay ahead of every Cowboys development, every roster move, and every strategic shift as we get closer to the draft and the 2026 season, make sure you subscribe now and turn on notifications, because this is where the real analysis happens.